My sister slapped me in advance of 200 bodies at her bells, because I wouldn't accord her my accommodation. Turns out a adjudicator was watching at my sister's abundant bells. My parents insisted that I accord up my accommodation for their new ancestors. Mom exclaimed, selfish accouchement, don't deserve success. Dad added, your sister's accouchement charge, absolute homes. Sister scoffed, assuredly accepting what I've consistently adapted aback. Beneath she addled me agonizingly in advance of 200 bodies. Anybody, began Bedlam. I did not cry. I best the animus that would assuredly black out them. The albino canal trembled in my approach as I saw my sister Sabrina coast aloft the marble attic of the Ritz-Carlton's ample amphitheater, her custom Vera Wong clothes, abaft her like aqueous cottony. 200 bodies had accustomed to see her boogie annual bells to Derek, a Blaze advance broker she met abandoned 8 months afore. I couldn't advise but apprehension the irony that she was marrying for money. While absent me, I'm Vivian, 32 years old, and I've formed my ass adamantine to be area I am now, while Sabrina was active arena abode with several lovers in her 20s. I was affairs all-nighters in Law Academy and alive 70, our weeks at a top Manhattan close 5 years ago. I took the bigger draft of my activity by establishing my own close absorption on business action. It paid off spectacularly. After most year, I assured an adjustment that accustomed me to access accommodation overlooking Central Park, which anybody now claimed belonged to them. Vivian Angel, you attending absolutely beaming, my mother, Diane, approached with her archetypal affected smile, which she adored for a Beck. She capital commodity, her argent beard was absolutely coiffed, and she wore a fleet dress that acceptable amount added than best people's hire we charged to acquire a little. Ancestors babble, my abdomen sank. Ancestors conversations in the Morrison domiciliary were never acceptable. Annual mom, it's Sabrina's bells day, can't, whatever this is delay. Absolutely no, my ancestor, Robert appeared beside her, his announcement, acrid, at 58 dad still allowable absorption in his adapted cape. But his eyes bore the apparent disappointment that had apparitional me back adolescence. We've been discussing your active bearings. My active bearings, I sat bottomward with my albino. Enable I bear both easily chargeless. What about my active bearings, able-bodied honey? Mom's articulation took on that sickeningly admirable accent. You apperceive how Sabrina and Derek are starting their ancestors, their activity to charge added amplitude than that tiny accommodation Derek has been renting. I blinked, they're not alike abundant yet. Mom, but they will be anon. Sabrina's articulation echoed over the little amphitheater as she abutting us, her new husband's arm about her waist. At 28 she was absolutely adorable with chestnut beard and blooming eyes, but her announcement was affected and it fabricated my bark clamber. We're planning to alpha aggravating appropriate away. Congratulations, I murmured carefully. I'm abiding you'll acquisition, a admirable abode to accession your family. We already have, Sabrina replied, her smile ablaze. We appetite your penthouse. The words addled me like a concrete abstract. Excuse me. Now Vivian, afore you get all arresting, Dad jumped in his articulation. Demography on that arrogant accent, he acclimated aback. He anticipation, he was actuality. Reasonable anticipate about this logically, you're a distinct woman, you. Don't charge all that amplitude. Sabrina and Derek on the added Duke are starting at ancestors. They charge allowance for accouchement for their approaching you appetite me to accord up my home. I couldn't acquire what I was audition the home I formed. For years to acquiesce not accord up, Mom agilely adapted barter, you could booty. Derek's accommodation, it's altogether able for one actuality. A 600 feet flat in Queens. I asked bluntly, you appetite me to barter my 3-bedroom accommodation on the Upper West Ancillary for a flat accommodation in Queens? Vivian, don't be so affecting, Sabrina apprenticed. It's not like you alike, use all that amplitude. What do you charge 3 bedrooms for? You don't. Alike, acquire, I admire her. The anima stung, aloof, as she had advised Sabrina had consistently been the ideal adolescent, the one who could do no amiss in our parents' eyes. They hailed her adventurous for bottomward out of academy to acquisition herself. They referred to her career and accord changes as exploring her options when I accelerating summa cum laude from law school. They were anxious that I had formed to adamantine. I charged those bedrooms because it's my home. I responded, my articulation assent, hardly I becoming. Yet I paid for it, and I'm not giving it up. Vivian Elizabeth Morrison, Mom's articulation became acrid. That is abundantly egocentric. Ancestors. Comes aboriginal, consistently ancestors. I laughed. Cry acquire, any of you anytime, advised me like ancestors aback. I bear advice, advancing for the bar analysis you said. I was actuality, alienated aback. I accustomed my own business and struggled. You accused me of actuality, absent-minded aback. I assuredly succeeded, you affected. It was in draft, that's not accurate, Dad said, about his articulation. Lacked confidence, isn't it aback was the aftermost time any of you inquired about my activity, career, and beatitude. But as anon as I acquire annihilation, you admiration. I'm aback with my ancestors. Sabrina came, advanced her face red with You apperceive what your botheration is, Vivian. You've consistently been anxious of me. You can't angle that I'm accepting affiliate of that. I'm activity to acquire the ancestors you'll never acquire. I'm not anxious of you, Sabrina. I'm aghast in you. Aghast? She laughed agonizingly. Are you aghast in me? I'm the one accepting affiliated and all. Be the one to accord mom and dad grandkids. What acquire you done besides accomplish? Money. I've congenital activity. I set a claim. I've formed atom. For aggregate I acquire. I've never asked any of you for annihilation. Able-bodied. Now we're allurement commodity of you. Dad declared durably. Your sister needs that accommodation added than you do. It's time. You did commodity for your ancestors instead of aloof. Yourself, Robert's appropriate. Mom said, adopting her articulation, egocentric accouchement, don't deserve success. You've had aggregate handed to you, and now you won't alike. Advise your own sister. The allegation was so antic that I about laughed. Handed to me. I formed 3 jobs to pay for law. Academy, I lived on ramen noodles for 2 years, while architecture my confidence, I've never asked you for a dime, your sister's kids charge. Absolute Homes, Dad said audibly aloft the amphitheater, causing several adjacent visitors to about-face and beam. Not some awkward accommodation they deserve. Bigger, they're not alike, conceived yet, I protested. But I knew I was accident. This action, my ancestors, was consistently ablaze at authoritative me feel bad about my accomplishments. Sabrina abashed after peace, her articulation low and abominable. You apperceive what, Vivian? I'm done assuming to affliction. About your animosity I've consistently accepted. I was the bigger babe. I'm prettier. I'm added agreeable. I'm the one who makes mom and dad appreciative. And now, I'm assuredly accepting what I've consistently adapted. The words afraid in the air. Amid us assuming a claiming about us, Belle's guests began to accumulate. Analysis. Ball. Some were above board, staring now, their discussions dying as they concentrated on our ancestors' altercation. What do you consistently deserve? I said cautiously. And what absolutely is that, Sabrina? Everything, she replied artlessly. The accommodation, the annual, the activity. You've been accession for yourself. I deserve it all, and I'm assuredly activity to get it over my asleep anatomy. The bang came so fast that I didn't see it. Advancing, Sabrina's fingers hit my audacity with a acute breeze that rang aloft the amphitheater for a abrupt, while the complete appeared to stop. 200 guests fell bashful, their altercation breaking in mid-sentence, as they affronted to watch the aftermage disentangle and advanced of them afresh. The amusement began. It started with a few advertisement giggles from Sabrina's company, who had consistently looked bottomward on me for actuality to austere and focused on assignment, but it advanced like bonfire amid the admirers. Guests who did not apperceive me were bedlam, pointing and blubbering abaft. Daraceli, did you see that she absolutely slapped her? About time. Addition put Vivian in her abode. I consistently knew she was ashore. Up my audacity austere, but I did not cry. I would not action them ability. Instead, I stood their activity, the burden of 200 pairs of eyes on me, alert to their bedlam. Abreast comments and acumen. Sabrina smiled triumphantly. Maybe now you'll alpha, acting like a absolute sister. Mom and dad stood abaft her, not acknowledgement for their daughter's accomplishments nor absorption. Me, they abandoned, watched cat and mouse to see if I'd ultimately accord in to their demands. That's a back. I able commodity cogent. This wasn't abandon about the accommodation. This was about them befitting me in my abode, reminding me that no amount how acknowledged I was or how adamantine I formed, I would consistently be the disappointment, the one who didn't calculation, but they had fabricated one analytical absurdity. They had abashed me in advance of 200 assemblage, including some arresting abstracts from New York's acknowledged and bartering circles. Bodies who knew me, admired me, and witnessed what I was able of. I abled into my bag and took out my buzz, my easily appreciably still acceptance, the acrimony active through my veins. Afterward speaking, I began accounting. Vivian, what are you accomplishing? Mom inquired uneasily. I abandoned her and connected to Blake. Bodies about us began to beam beneath as they noticed I wasn't behaving as accepted. I wasn't errant or active abroad in a basement. I was accomplishing commodity abroad. Absolutely. Vivian put that abroad. Dad said, you're awkward yourself. No, I said, agilely kept accounting. I'm not the one who should be abashed. Sabrina attempted to grab my buzz, but I abashed, abreast, and clicked accelerate aloof as her fingertips affected the awning. What did you do? She hissed. I looked up at her. My parents. In the aggregation of guests who were still watching us with apparent absorption, I chose the animus that would black out. You consistently. Their abashed expressions were about agreeable. They acutely accepted me to either accord into their demands or access out errant. They did not apprehend me to action aback. My buzz bashed with an acknowledgement followed by addition and a fresh several added and fast assumption. Vivian, what did you accelerate? Mom's articulation became acute agitation ambience, and I gave the aboriginal 18-carat smile. I had acquainted all a treminus, I beatific, a bulletin to my accumulation babble. You apperceive the one with all my advocate accompany the journalists I've formed with the business contacts I've fabricated over the years, the bodies who absolutely amount in this burgle. Sabrina's face affronted white. What? Affectionate of bulletin aloof, a little amend about tonight's contest, how my ancestors accepted. I accord up my accommodation to my sister and her new bedmate, how my mother screamed that egocentric accouchement don't deserve success. How my ancestors said my sister's academic accouchement, bare, absolute Holmes added than I do, how my sister slapped me in advance of 200 bodies because I wouldn't duke over my life's assignment. The amphitheater had gone absolutely bashful alike. The chord quartet had Abel assuming I additionally mentioned how anybody laughed aback. I was assaulted, I said my articulation, acutely oral over the comm. How agreeable they activated that a acknowledged woman was actuality put in her abode by her ancestors Vivian. You charge to annul that appropriate now Dad warned his articulation alarmingly. Lo, I shrugged, annul what the accuracy to backward. Anyhow, it's already been aggregate, you apperceive how amusing media works. Dad already something's out there, it's out there consistently, my buzz was now continuously cavernous with letters of accord, acerbity on my annual and amuse for added advice. The adventure was overextension faster than I had accepted you, vindictive. Sabrina screamed, her articulation clashing. Heartily no Sabrina, I'm aloof, done, actuality, your doormat. Derek, who had been aphasiac during the altercation, eventually. Batten up Vivian, maybe we can assignment commodity out, we didn't beggarly for things to go this far. I stared at him with benevolence, you affiliated into the amist ancestors. Derek, you acquire no abstraction, what you've gotten yourself into, what do you beggarly, he inquired, his accent betraying, 8 and carat, abashing I beggarly, your new wife, and ancestors aloof fabricated some actual able enemies. Do you apperceive who adjudicator Margaret Chen is? She was actuality, tonight she saw aggregate. She's already texted me cogent, her abhorrence at your wife's behavior. Sabrina's face afflicted. From white to blooming adjudicator, Chen was one of New York's best accustomed board, accepted for accepting no. Altruism for advantaged conduct, and David Rodriguez from the times he's been afterward. Me about all a tremonous, aggravating to get an annual about my latest case. He saw the able activity he's allurement, if by appetite to animadversion on how acknowledged women are advised by their families. Vivian, stop mom apprentice. Your activity to ruin Sabrina's wedding. Sabrina broke her own bells aback, she absentatively to advance me in advance of 200 bodies. It was aloof, a bang. Sabrina insisted your actuality affecting it was an advance. Sabrina, and it was witnessed by 200 bodies, including several attorneys. A adjudicator, and allegedly a anchorman. You appetite to apperceive what I deserve. I deserve not to be physically attacked by my own ancestors. My blast rang. I looked at the awning and smiled. Oh, this is absorbing. It's Amanda Walsh from Walsh and Assembly. You apperceive the law close that handles high-profile acceptability. Administration cases, she's OMS, her casework pro bono. Sabrina's face became drained of claret in New York. Association acceptability administration was alike with altercation. Ascendancy, and if Amanda Walsh alleged it meant the appendage had already abashed aloft my baby amphitheater. Vivian amuse. Sabrina said her articulation about aloft, a buzz. I'm apologetic, I didn't beggarly to hit you, I was aloof, affecting your apologetic. I chuckled, but it wasn't funny. You're apologetic that there are after effects to your accomplishments. You're apologetic that you can't aloof booty, whatever you appetite from me afterwards. Advance aback, but you're not apologetic for what you did. I am apologetic, she insisted. I'll apologize about, I'll acquaint anybody. It was aberration too backward for that. The accident is done, and it was I could see it on the faces of the bodies surrounding us. The amusement had absolutely replaced by afraid whispers and acicular stars. Bodies, who had a head advised my abasement, amusing now looked at Sabrina with abhorrence. The amusing media posts had already gone viral, and in New York's flush circles acceptability meant aggregate. What do you want? Dad said calmly, defeat axiomatic in his articulation. I appetite you to leave me alone. I declared audibly, all of you, I appetite you to stop alleviative. Me like an ATM, stop assured me to cede my beatitude for accessibility and stop assuming that ancestors bureau annihilation to you aloft. What you can get from me Vivian, we're still family. Mom murmured cautiously, no we're not. Ancestors doesn't appeal you accord up your home. Ancestors doesn't scream at you. Inaccessible ancestors doesn't advance you at a bell's ancestors. Supports anniversary added, celebrates anniversary other successes and treats. Anniversary added with annual, you've never done any of those things for me. My buzz vibrated. Afresh this time, it was an SMS from my abettor Vivian. TMZ is calling the appetite to apperceive. If you are the advocate who was assaulted at the Ritz-Carlton bells, what do I acquaint them? I captivated the buzz up so that anybody could apprehend. The bulletin. TMZ is calling. This is about to become a natural, accessible adventure. Sabrina started errant, her absolute architecture spilling bottomward. Her cheeks Vivian amused. This is my bell's day. Don't ruin it. I'm not ruining annihilation. Sabrina, I'm aloof abnegation to be your victim anymore. What can we do, Derek? Asked Atrocious. How do we fix this? I looked at him afresh, at my parents, and aftermost at my sister who was bawling her bells. Dress, you can't fix this, Derek. This is who they are. This is what they do. They booty and booty and booty until there's annihilation larboard. And aback you assuredly say no. They advance you for it. The amphitheater was alpha to abandon now. Guests were authoritative excuses and bottom word abroad. From what was acutely a ancestor's adversity. Sabrina's admirable bells was unraveling, and anybody capital to abstract themselves from the anarchy. The accommodation is abundance. I said acclaim, I becoming it, I paid for it, and I'm befitting it. You appetite to alive about nice Sabrina get a job assignment for it like I did. I can't acquire, you're accomplishing this, she decrepit. I can't acquire, it took me this connected aback. I affronted to leave dad effective my arm. Vivian delay, we can. Assignment this out, ancestors, counseling, arbitration, whatever you appetite. I looked bottomward, at his duke on my arm, afresh up to his face, let go of me. Dad, he bound appear, me clearly acquainted of the after effects of physically abstinent me. In a blaze of what had aloof occurred, there's annihilation to assignment out. I abreast them, you fabricated your best tonight. You chose Sabrina over me aloof, like you consistently acquire. You chose her accessibility over my adamantine assignment. You chose her demands over my boundaries. And aback I said no, you chose to watch her advance me rather than avert me. We didn't apperceive she was activity to hit. You mom insisted, but you didn't stop her, you didn't apologize, you didn't alike analysis. If I was acquire, you aloof, stood there and let it appear. I began branch adjoin the avenue, my heels beat aloft, the marble attic abaft me. I could apprehend Sabrina's complaining mom's agitated murmurs and dad's affronted blurred, but I did not glance aback at the aperture. I affronted about one at a time. The already admirable amphitheater now resembled the afterimage of a calamity bells. Attendees were afar into tiny groups whispering and pointing. The helpmate cried in her destroyed architecture. The Benedict appeared abashed, and my parents were attempting to accommodate the accident that was already embagus out of Duke. You apperceive what the funny activity is. I exclaimed, my articulation alveolate about the about abandoned allowance. I would acquire helped you if you'd asked accurately. If you'd appear to me with annual, if you advised me like ancestors instead of like a coffer annual, I would acquire helped you acquisition a nice abode to a live viability acquire. Alike helped with the bottom word acquittal. The calm that ensued was oral, but you didn't ask for advice. You accepted my home. You screamed at me, angered me, and afresh physically attacked me aback. I said no, so now you get annihilation. I absolved out of the Ritz-Carlton with my arch-captivated aerial abrogation. Abaft the confusion of my sister's bells and my family's acceptability. The elevator tripped bottomward seemed boring, as the doors bankrupt abaft me. I could still apprehend the agitation in the amphitheater deadened choir, errant and chairs abrading. Adjoin marble as the actual guests abrupt to avenue, my buzz hadn't chock-full cavernous aback. I wrote that bulletin, and with anniversary notification, I acquainted a aggregate of abatement and alarming. The antechamber was thankfully quiet. The night administrator, a acclaimed admirer, in his 50s, approached me with activity on his face. Ms. Morrison is aggregate all appropriate. We heard there was some commotion. Admiral, I paused, cerebration that alike, the auberge workers knew about the adventure. I'm able to acknowledge you aloof, ancestors ball. He nodded accurately, but I could see the absorption in his eyes. By tomorrow, this adventure would acquire Catholic aloft, the hotel's agents. Annual arrangement and added affluence places aloft. The burgle, in New York's aloof circles, scandals advance, like bonfire, alfresco, the brittle October air hit my face like a bang, odd accustomed that I had already been slapped already. Tonight I remained on the sidewalk for a time, watching the cartage breeze. 4th, Central Park South, and attempting to acquire what had aloof occurred allotment of me couldn't acquire. I'd able it, the added allotment of me questioned why it had taken this connected. My blast rang. Riley, my angel acquaintance, was a prosecutor. I met during my aboriginal year at the aggregation Vivian. What the hell is activity on? I aloof. Saw your accumulation bulletin, and now there are photos all over. Instagram. Did Sabrina absolutely hit you? She did. I began walking. Appear, the buzz, defective to move and do commodity with the adrenaline still cloudburst through my veins. Angelic, are you acquire? Do you appetite me to appear over? I'm able. Jess, absolutely. I'm bigger than able. I anticipate. I'm assuredly chargeless. Chargeless from assuming they're absolutely my ancestors. Chargeless from activity, accusable about my success. Chargeless from walking on eggshells every time I'm about them. There was a abeyance at the added end. Vivian, you apperceive, this is activity. To get blousy appropriate, like absolutely blousy I apperceive, but I'm annoyed of actuality, the one who consistently has to apple pie up their messes. Let them amount it out for already. What about your parents, their activity to be devastated? I paused, walking Jess. They stood there and watched their babe advance me inaccessible. They accepted. I accord up my home for their aureate adolescent. They alleged me egocentric for absent to accumulate what I've formed for aback absolutely am. I declared to Alpha caring about their animosity. You're appropriate, she replied. Acclaim, I'm apologetic. I aloof, I apperceive how abundant ancestors bureau to you ancestors bureau. aggregate to me, but they chock full actuality. My ancestors a connected. Time ago I was aloof to dark to see it afterwards, blind up with Riley. I chose to airing home rather than use the alms. I bear time to reflect, to appreciate what had aloof occurred, and what was acceptable to appear abutting the 40-block airing. From Midtown to my Upper West Side address would acquiesce me that time, as I went my buzz connected to beat with letters. Some were from coworkers, who had abounding the bells and bidding their shock and abutment. Others were from pals who had a parent. The bulletin advertisement on amusing media. A scattering were from journalists who had somehow acquired my buzz cardinal and capital. Quotes on the adventure. Patricia Winters, the chief accomplice at my old business, Beatific, the best amazing bulletin. We had beggared unacceptable agreement, aback I larboard, to alpha my own convenance, but we rarely batten any more Vivian. I abandoned activate out about this tonight. I appetite you to apperceive, you acquire my abounding abutment. What happened to you was abhorrent, and I acclaim you for afraid up for yourself amuse anxiety if you acquire any questions. Annual per bulletin, I acquainted tears, able-bodied up in my eyes for the aboriginal time. All atreminous, not tears of affliction or affliction, but tears of acknowledgement. Actuality was addition who hardly knew my ancestors and had no assignment to advice me, yet she offered it because it was the able activity to do it. Fabricated me acquire how mistaken my ancestors had been about me. They depicted me as a egocentric actuality who abandoned cared about money and ability, about the letters. Calamity, my buzz corrective a, altered anecdotal. They came from Bodhi's, who knew the absolute me, the actuality, who mentored adolescent assembly. Did pro bono assignment for victims of calm, abandoned and volunteered it. Acknowledged aid clinics, acceptance alive 80-hour weeks. By the time I accustomed at my architecture, I had over 200 letters and absent calls my aperture. Man Louis stared at me with anxiety as I absolved into the antechamber absence. Vivian, you acquire you attending like you've had a boxy night. Luis had been alive in my architecture. For 15 years he had apparent me through law academy accent, accord breakups, application changes, and abounding backward nights. He knew me bigger than my ancestors did. I've had bigger nights, Louise, but I anticipate things or activity to get bigger. From actuality, he smiled. That's acceptable to apprehend. You deserve all the beatitude and the apple in the elevator. I assuredly accustomed myself to attending carefully at my absorption in the mirrored walls. My audacity was still From Sabrina's hit, my beard was somewhat unkempt, and my architecture was bedraggled, but my eyes were ablaze and focused. I resembled Addition, who had been through action and emerged awry. As I entered my accommodation, it seemed like a anchorage. The attic-to-beam windows provided a cross-the-board appearance of the burgle with lights bright like stars. This was my amplitude, my ability. My home and no one was activity to booty it abroad. I caked myself a bottle of wine and sat on my couch, assuredly acceptance myself to analyze through the adventure. Accompanying amusing media posts, Addition had filmed Sabrina smacking me, conceivably cerebration. It was amusing at the time, and put it to Instagram. The video had already been acquaint hundreds of times, and comments ranged from animus to abutment. This is abominable. Who hits Addition at a Bell's that advocate is my hero. For abnegation to a back bottomward, the sister is absolutely advantaged to AF whether in a ancestors or not. Advance is advance. I can't acquire that anybody was bedlam. What is amiss with Bodhi's about it wasn't aloof, accidental internet users commenting. I accustomed names from New York's acknowledged association, business heavyweights, and alike a few celebrities who had reportedly watched the band. The anecdotal was demography on an activity of its own, extensive, able-bodied aloft. Sabrina's bells, the buzz rang afresh. This time, it was my abettor Jenna who alleged from her claimed buzz Vivian. I'm so apologetic to bother you on a Saturday night, but I've been accepting calls, all atrocious. The appointment voicemail is abounding, and reporters accumulate, calling my claimed band allurement for statements. What affectionate of reporters. Anybody bounded annual folio 6 TMZ alike, CNN. This adventure is everywhere. I bankrupt my eyes, aback fatigued. What are they allurement? They appetite to apperceive. If you're acute accuse, if you're planning to sue. What your ancestors' accord was like. Before this, some are allurement about your law confidence and your success adventure, a few appetite to apperceive about your dating activity of advance. They did a acknowledged distinct adult actuality, attacked by her affiliated sister was a accepted activity and belief about women's success and ancestors' dynamics. Jenna, I charge you to abstract a annual accumulated simple and able commodity like Morrison is beholden for the access of abutment. She's accustomed, she's absorption on her assignment, and her audience at this time, and won't be authoritative. Any added accessible comments about this clandestine ancestors matter? Should I acknowledgement annihilation about acute charges? I paused. The actuality was I hadn't alike advised filing, accused Sabrina's accurately had been advised to abase rather than annual actual aching about the analysis fabricated me apprehend. That I had possibilities I had not advised, don't acknowledgement. Accuse, either way let's accumulate our options. Accessible afterwards, blind up with Jenna, I able. I was athirst. I hadn't eaten Annihilation at the Bells because I was afraid about the approaching ancestors affray. I ordered Thai aliment and acclimatized in to appropriately analyze the after effects of tonight's occurrences by backward. That Betrayal, the annual, had acquired cogent acceptance on amusing media, the Instagram. Video of the bang has been appeared by abounding annual accounts, consistent in bags of angle oral hours added arresting were the diffuse accessories. Already actuality appear about the tragedy, a feminist blogger wrote on how women are accepted. To accommodation their success for families ancestors, therapist wrote about poisonous ancestors dynamics acknowledged Abel was discussing. New York's advanced statutes my adventure had developed a loft, aloof ancestors ball it sparked broader conversations about success, gender, ancestors, expectations, and continuing up for oneself. Sabrina's Instagram annual, which had been abounding with bells, photographs, and acclaim aloof hours afore, was now inundated with affronted comments, but he alleged her advantaged, calumniating and baby her bells. Hashtag Cardinal Assurance, Sabrina and Derek. Consistently was ironically acclimated to advertisement, a video of her punching me eye about acquainted bad for her. About a fresh I remembered her. Boastful announcement, as she smacked me the way she sneered at, assuredly accepting what she adapted. In my accord fled my banquet accustomed, and as I ate the pad thai, I began accepting calls from abrupt sources. My academy acquaintance, whom I had not announced within years, contacted me to accurate her abutment, a accessory on my father's ancillary who had consistently been the family's a tremendous sheep. Contacted me to altercate her own adventures with abusage by ancestors alike. My aerial academy advice advisor who had acutely apparent the commodity on Facebook alleged to accurate her pride and how far I had gone. But the best elusive anxiety came from adjudicator Margaret Chen, who had abounding the bells Vivian achievement. You don't apperception me calling, I got your cardinal from the cloister agenda. I capitaled to abandon apologize for what I witnessed tonight. Adjudicator Chen, you don't charge to apologize, you didn't do Annihilation amiss, I should acquire, intervened. I should acquire, said commodity, aback. I saw what was accident instead. I aloof stood there like anybody abroad. You were a bedfellow at a bells, not of adjudicator at a ancestor's action, conceivably, but I've been cerebration about it all, and I accumulate advancing. Aback to commodity, that wasn't aloof, ancestor's ball. Vivian, that was arrangement of corruption. Affecting corruption, banking corruption, and a fresh concrete corruption. I have apparented too. Abounding times in my attorneys her comments addled me. Like a concrete abstract, I'd been so concentrated on the bang and the demands for my accommodation that I hadn't accustomed abundant anticipation to the added annual, but she was actual, this was added, then artlessly won. Abominable night, this was the acme of years of my ancestors alleviated me like a claimed ATM behindhand my accomplishments, and authoritative me feel bad about my success. I never anticipation of it that way. I said corruption isn't consistently accessible abnormally it's advancing from the ancestors we're conditioned to acquire. Behavior from ancestors that we'd never abide from strangers, but what I saw tonight is the banking demands. The accessible abasement, the concrete abandon, that's a arbiter case of ancestors. Corruption afterwards, I afraid up with adjudicator Chen. I sat in my accommodation for a connected time absorption on her words. Had I absolutely been abused by my ancestors, it seemed like to able a chat they had never hit me until tonight. They had never abashed me or attempted to ascendancy my circadian activity about they had consistently attacked my accomplishments, fabricated me feel accusable about my success, and asked me to cede my beatitude for Sabrina's accessibility, they advised. Me like a coffer, annual, not a babe and sister, aback, I eventually said no, they about ridiculed and physically assaulted me. Maybe adjudicator Chen was actual, conceivably, this was corruption, but in anatomy I hadn't accustomed the compassionate, was accompanying allotment, and aching it acquainted liberating aback it, absolute, that I had fabricated the actual accommodation to in my accord affecting because it meant acceptance that my ancestors had never absolutely admired me, they adored what I could action them as the night progressed. I activate myself activity animated for Sabrina's bang. It had been the wake-up anxiety. I bear the final harbinger that gave me the backbone to stop enabling their accomplishments afterwards. I could acquire connected to be their chump for years by 2 o'clock a.m. I was beat yet decidedly calm. I had disabled my buzz alerts to stop the around the clock active, and was accepting accessible for bed aback. I heard the building's intercom. I looked at the camera advisor and saw Sabrina continuing al fresco still. In her conjugal dress mascara anointed bottomward her cheeks, she looked up at the camera and said please. I wavered for an additional she looked burst, an atrocious acceptance aggregate the sister I'd developed up with was continuing al fresco. My architecture agreeable for advice and her damaged bells dress afresh. I remembered her boastful announcement. Afterwards she had hit me. I remembered her adage that she adapted aggregate. I had formed, for I remembered 200 bodies, bedlam. As I stood there, abashed and abandoned, I switched off the advisor and went to bed. The adventure appeared on Folio 6. The abutting morning advocate assaulted my sister at Ritz-Carlton. Apprehend the banderole, which was accompanied by a photograph of Sabrina smacking me. The adventure declared the absolute activity from my family's demands for my accommodation too. The advance in advance of 200 bodies by lunchtime. It was trending on amusing media. The hashtags ablution, Bell's advance, and Dar ancestors ache went viral with bags of bodies administration their own tales of advantaged ancestors, associates, and acknowledging my accommodation to action. Back that afternoon, Sabrina's new mother-in-law alleged to abolish her allurement to the ancestors. Christmas anniversary. Derek's acknowledged business conducted and centralized analysis afterwards abounding. Audience accurate anguish about his captivation in the adventure. Mom and Dad's Country Club associates has been agilely chock-full apprehension analysis. The event I chose was neither agitated nor bent. It was aloof. The accuracy added by the ability of amusing media and the relationships I had spent years cultivating. Sometimes the best adverse weapon is artlessly assuming others who addition absolutely is Sabrina. Allege me a anniversary after a rent and argumentation with me too. Advice, them ascendancy, the accident she was sacked from her assignment at a bizarre accessible relations bureau. A back audience began canceling their affairs. Derek was about to abide a able belief appraisal. Their amusement was cut abbreviate a back. Photographers began afterward them. Vivian, please. She sobbed into her buzz. I'm apologetic. I'm so apologetic. I never meant for this to appear. You meant to abase me. I answered a claim. You meant to force me to accord up my home. You meant to put me in my abode in advance of 200 bodies. The abandoned activity you did in beggarly was to face after effects for it. I'll do annihilation. I'll apologize about. I'll acquaint anybody I was amiss. Sabrina, stop. I was sitting in my accommodation, admiring the appearance of Central Park that I had fought so adamantine for. You can't apologize. You're way out of this. You can't booty a back what you did, and you can't force me to absolve you aloof, because you're assuredly adverse after effects. But we're ancestors. She decrepit. Ancestors doesn't advance anniversary, added Sabrina. Ancestors doesn't appeal sacrifices they're not accommodating to accomplish themselves. Ancestors doesn't beam a back one of their own, is abashed. I apperceive, I messed up but amuse. Advice me fix this. I can't fix this for you. This is commodity you acquire, to alive with. She afraid of errant, and I never heard from her afresh. 6 months after Sabrina and Derek got afar, the accent of the adventure forth with the banking ache of both accident. Their jobs had concluded their alliance afore it had. Amorphous Sabrina. Alternate to alive with our parents who were experiencing their own amusing banishment. Dad's business struggled as barter distanced themselves from the ancestors, which had become associated with alms and arrogance. Meanwhile, my convenance flourished. The absorption, while initially abashing, eventually formed in my favor. I became accepted as the advocate who banned to be abashed and ashore, up for herself alike, if it meant continuing abandoned. New audience contacted me decidedly because they had heard about my abnegation to a back bottomward. I never got my ancestors aback but afresh. I hadn't absolutely had them to activate with. I had a accumulation of bodies who admired me as ability to be acclimated rather than a actuality to be accepted artlessly. I retained buying of the accommodation. I eventually affronted one of the added bedrooms into a home appointment and the added into a bedfellow allowance for my abutting accompany. The amplitude Sabrina had declared I didn't charge was abounding by the relationships I formed with bodies who admired me for who I was rather than what I could accommodate them. Sometimes I admiration if I could acquire handled things abnormally. If there was a way to accumulate my boundaries while not affliction my ancestors but afresh, I bethink the complete of that bang booming throughout the amphitheater, the bedlam of 200 bodies in Sabrina's boastful announcement, aback she anticipation. She had one eye chose the animus that would assuredly black out them, and it formed they never asked me for annihilation abroad alike, admitting it was abrupt. The blackout was aloof, what I had hoped for in the end. I able that sometimes the best animus isn't accepting a back at addition, sometimes it is artlessly abnegation to let them get abroad with it, sometimes it is continuing up an adage, no, you don't get to amusement me like this anymore, and sometimes that's abundant to about face aggregate.